Right now, somewhere in the world, a serial killer is hiding in plain sight. They look like your neighbor, your coworker, maybe even your friend. But here's what science has actually discovered about how they got this way. Serial killers are not born evil. They are made, and the science proves it, which raises the most disturbing question in all of criminal psychology today. What if we could have stopped them before they ever became who they became? What if every factor that created them simply never existed in the first place? How different would the world be? How many lives would have been saved? This is What If. And today we go inside the mind that should never have existed. Stay with us, because the answer changes everything you think you know about evil. Let's start with the most important question. Are serial killers born or made? For decades, this debate divided scientists, psychologists, and criminologists worldwide. Today, in 2026, we actually have a definitive answer, and it's more complex than either side. The answer is both: nature and nurture, biology and environment, always both. Let's start with biology. The brain of a serial killer is measurably different. The prefrontal cortex, the part that controls impulse and empathy, is underactive. Studies of 28 serial killers show this region functions significantly below normal levels. Less activity here means less ability to feel what others feel, less empathy, but, and this is crucial, brain differences alone do not create a killer. Ever. Thousands of people have the same brain patterns and never hurt anyone at all. So, what is the missing ingredient? What turns a different brain into a dangerous one? The answer is childhood, specifically childhood trauma, severe and repeated trauma. The FBI study of 36 convicted serial killers revealed a chilling consistent pattern. 100% of them experienced some form of psychological abuse in early childhood. 100%, 74% grew up in households with some form of substance abuse present constantly. 69% witnessed domestic violence regularly, often from a very young age at home, and almost all of them shared one devastating experience. They felt completely invisible, not seen, not heard, not loved, not protected by anyone who should have protected them. This is where the transformation begins, not in a moment of evil, but in years of pain. The child's brain, still developing, adapts to survive in a threatening environment. It shuts down empathy as a protective mechanism. Feelings become dangerous to have. It creates what psychologists call the MacDonald Triad. 3 warning signs: bedwetting past a normal age, cruelty to animals, and obsessive fire-starting behavior. These 3 behaviors appear in the childhood of an alarming number of known serial killers. Jeffrey Dahmer tortured animals as a child. Ted Bundy had a disturbing early home life. John Wayne Gacy was repeatedly beaten by his abusive alcoholic father growing up. In almost every case, the monster was made by the people who were supposed to protect them. But there's another factor we haven't discussed yet, and it might be the most important: social isolation, the inability to form normal human connections with anyone around them. Research shows most serial killers were bullied, rejected, and deeply socially isolated early. They fantasized obsessively about power because in real life they had absolutely none. This is the psychological formula: damaged brain plus trauma plus isolation equals danger. And every single piece of that formula had to exist for the outcome to occur. Which brings us to the most important question of this entire video today. What if we remove just one piece from that formula? What changes in the outcome? What if the trauma never happened? What if the brain got the help it needed early? What if the isolation was broken by just one person who actually cared enough to try? The answer, backed by decades of research, will genuinely change how you see the world. Let's go into the what if, and let's start from the very beginning of their story. Because this isn't just a story about killers, it's a story about what we failed to do. Welcome to part 2. We're going back to where it all began for them. Imagine the childhood of someone who would become a serial killer. Now change it. What if instead of abuse, they receive stability, safety, consistent love from parents? The brain responds differently to safety than it does to danger, fundamentally differently. A child's brain in a safe environment develops empathy naturally and consistently over time. The prefrontal cortex, that underactive region in killers, develops fully when nurtured. Research shows children with secure attachment are significantly less likely to be violent. Now, what if the school system also caught the warning signs and intervened early? The MacDonald Triad behaviors, cruelty to animals, fire, bedwetting, are detectable. A trained school counselor could have identified these patterns years before any crime. What if every child showing these signs got immediate professional psychological support? Studies show early intervention in at-risk children reduces violent outcomes by up to 70%. 70%. That is not a small number. That is most of them. Gone from the criminal path. Now let's talk about isolation, because this one is perhaps the most preventable factor. What if one teacher, one mentor, one adult had genuinely connected with that child? Research on resilience consistently shows one caring adult can change a child's entire trajectory. Just one. That's all it takes in many documented cases of children at risk. Just one person. Ted Bundy himself admitted he might have been different with a different family environment. Jeffrey Dahmer's neighbor later said she saw signs, but didn't know what to do then. What if the people around them had known the warning signs and acted on them early? Now, let's address the hardest what if of this entire discussion today. What if we provided proper mental health support to every child in the system? Right now, in the United States alone, 60% of children with mental health needs get nothing. No therapy, no counseling, no diagnosis, no support, nothing. Just silence and struggle. What if every single one of those children received what they actually needed to heal? The financial cost of one serial killer investigation exceeds $30 million on average in the US. Prevention costs a fraction of that. Therapy for one child costs less than one police hour. But we consistently choose to pay for consequences rather than prevention as a society. Now, let's look at genetics, because this is where it gets truly interesting scientifically. Researchers discovered something called the warrior gene, MAOA-L, in many killers. This genetic variant is linked to lower serotonin levels and higher aggression potential. But here's what makes this extraordinary. It only activates under severe stress and trauma. Remove the trauma, and the gene never activates. The violence pathway never opens up. Nature provides the gun. Nurture pulls the trigger. Remove the trigger. No shot is fired. This means the genetic destiny many believe in is not actually destiny at all here. It is a predisposition, a vulnerability, one that requires specific conditions to activate, which means every serial killer we've ever known could theoretically have been someone else. A teacher, a doctor, a father, a friend, someone who contributes rather than destroys. And that realization, more than anything else, you should deeply change how we see this issue, because the real question is not what made them monsters. It's what we failed to do for them. Welcome to part 3. What does the world actually look like without serial killers in it? First, let's understand the actual scale of the problem we're talking about removing. The FBI estimates between 25 and 50 active serial killers are operating in the US right now. Globally, the number is significantly higher and far harder to track across all borders. Since 1900, serial killers have claimed at least 100,000 known victims worldwide, conservatively. The real number, including unknown and unreported cases, is almost certainly much higher. Now imagine, what if every single one of those victims was never a victim at all? 100,000 people who lived their full lives instead of having them taken away violently. Families that were never destroyed. Children who were never orphaned by senseless violence. Communities that never lived in fear after a monster was revealed among them for years. Now, let's talk about the ripple effects, because the impact goes far beyond victims alone. The true crime industry, worth $900 million annually, would fundamentally not exist. Netflix documentaries, podcasts, books, TV shows, all built on real human suffering and tragedy. Without serial killers, that entire cultural obsession simply would not exist anywhere. Law enforcement would look dramatically different in a world without serial killers in it. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, BAU, was created specifically to profile serial killers. Profiling, forensic psychology, criminal databases. These fields wouldn't exist as we know them. Billions of dollars spent on cold case investigations would be freed for other social needs. But here's the most profound change in this world we're imagining together today. Trust. Human beings in this world would have fundamentally more trust in strangers. The reason people lock their doors at night has a lot to do with knowing monsters are real. Children would walk to school alone more freely. Women would feel safer in public at night. The psychological burden of fear that every woman carries every single day would be lighter. Mental health resources freed from crisis response could go toward building better communities. Now, let's talk about prevention, Because here's what this what if actually teaches us. We cannot change the past, but we can absolutely change the future with what we now know. The science exists, the research exists, the prevention strategies exist right now today. What we're missing is not knowledge. What we're missing is the collective will to act on it. Norway implemented comprehensive early childhood intervention programs in the 1990s. Their violent crime rate dropped 40% over the following 2 decades as a direct result. Portugal decriminalized drugs and invested in mental health instead of prison in 2001. Drug-related crime and associated violence dropped dramatically within just 15 years. The evidence is clear. Prevention works. Early intervention works. Investment in children works. This what if isn't just a thought experiment. It's an instruction manual for the real world. The world without serial killers is possible. Not inevitable, but genuinely possible from here. But it requires something very simple and very difficult at the same time for us all. It requires us to see struggling children as future victims, not future criminals to fear. It requires us to invest in mental health the same way we invest in physical health as a society. It requires teachers, neighbors, and community members to know and act on warning signs early, because every serial killer was once a child, and every child deserves a different story. The story that was written for them was written by the failures of the adults around them. What if we wrote a different story? What if we started today with the children in front of us? That is the real what if of this episode. Not a fantasy, a genuine call to action for all. The science says it's possible. History says it works. The only question is whether we will try. And the answer to that question determines what kind of world our children will inherit from us. So let me ask you directly, what would you do with this information right now? Because awareness without action is just entertainment. And this deserves more than that. Share this video, talk about it. Look at the children around you with new eyes from today. Because the world without serial killers begins with the choices we make about children today. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think prevention can actually work at scale? That's the power of what if. It doesn't just ask questions, it reveals real answers we need. Next time you hear about a serial killer in the news, remember what created them early on. And ask the harder question. Not who they became, but what we failed to give them early. If this video made you see the world differently, hit that like button right now, please. Subscribe and ring the bell. We go deep on the hardest questions every single week. Next week, what if humans stopped having children, starting today? A question about human extinction that is far more relevant to 2026 than most people realize. We also have a full episode on the psychology of cults coming very soon for you too. Until then, keep asking the questions that make people uncomfortable. Those matter most. This is What If, and we'll see you in the next one. The uncomfortable truth awaits.